Hi, this is Dave DeSimone in the Wine Cellar. Welcome to the first spring edition, 2017, in the Wine Cellar, and thank you for tuning in here on KQV Radio, 1410 AM. Remember, you can hear archive recordings of this show and others either at kqv.com or on my website, daveswinecellar.com. That's daveswinecellar.com. And I also have weekly blog posts at daveswinecellar.com, so please check it out. So today I'm excited to explore red wines from one of my favorite grape varieties, Pinot Noir. But in this case, not just any Pinot Noirs, but Pinot Noirs from Alsace in northeastern France. You might know Alsace better for its terrific dry Rieslings and also maybe Pinot Gris and Gewürztraminer, some of my favorite wines. But the momentum for Alsace Pinot Noir reds has been gaining steadily, and the wines are now really more readily available in the U.S., and I'm really happy to help us explore the wines. We're delighted to welcome two Alsace wine growers. In the second half of the show, we'll welcome Andre Ostertag. But now let's welcome into the wine cellar Mr. Christian Beyer of Domaine Emile Beyer in the beautiful village of Egesheim. Christian, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you, Dave. Nice to hear you today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and I had the pleasure of meeting you and your wife, Valerie, last fall, and we had a wonderful visit there in Egesheim, and one of the things, before I ask you about your background, but your family has been in business since 1580, and you're the 14th generation, so I guess you could say you've had probably your ups and downs over those hundreds of years, right?
You're absolutely right. It's a great mission, but it's mainly a great pleasure for me. And being the 14th generation is quite a heavy mission for me. But it's first of all a great pleasure to continue this tradition of the family.
Opportunity and a responsibility. So now, before we talk about Pinot Noir, tell us a little bit about your training, where you studied wine making, etc., please.
So I first make my studying in Burgundy, so I really enjoy doing Pinot Noir, and I take a lot of pleasure of producing great reds. But I also work in Bordeaux, and specifically in Alsace, so in the southern area, in the sweet southern style, very close to the Yquem, Chateau Yquem. And I also work before coming back home at Schloss Johannisberg, so in Germany. As you know, and as you enjoy the region, Alsace is in France actually, but it's also very close to the German style. So as Alsatian wine producer, we have to be aware, and we have to be close to the French and German side. So we have to be aware of both sides.
Right. And that's one of the great things about Alsace, the completely unique traditions there, which blend other places, but also you have your own unique identity, and that's great that you had the opportunity to see other places so that you can appreciate what you have there in Alsace, and I know that you really do have a passion and appreciation for it. And you mentioned Burgundy, and of course Pinot Noir has its spiritual home, so to speak, in Burgundy, but in Alsace, describe a little bit your feelings for Pinot Noir and how you work with it in the vineyard, and how Alsace terroir influences Pinot Noir in Alsace, please.
So as you mentioned, Alsace is really the earth of the European wine countries and wine region, and we've got a huge history about winemaking in Alsace, because we are involved in the winemaking since more than at least 200 years. So the Romans brought this wine culture with them 200 years ago, 2,000 years ago.
Yep.
And in the Middle Age, we used to have as much white and red wine in Alsace. And actually, there is a big trend for red wines. And so we are dealing with Pinot Noir since at least 400 years in Alsace. Makes from the Alsace region another very exciting and interesting region to produce Pinot Noir. And we've got everything Pinot Noir needs. So cool climates, limestone soils, and now there is a new generation, people in my age, who had a lot of experience out of the region in Burgundy, but also in Bordeaux, and people having another how should I say, another experience, another vision of red winemaking in the region. That makes a huge difference and makes red Alsatian wines completely different to the one we produced 20 or 25 years ago. Actually, the big trend, a lot of ambition to produce great red wines.
Right, and I know that you having this knowledge and passion and savoir-faire about your own terroir, you're not trying to make Burgundy wines in Alsace. You're trying to make the best and unique Alsace Pinot Noirs in Alsace. Is that a correct statement, would you say?
Yeah, Dave, you're exactly right. I think, all through Burgundy, and I sometimes talk with Sonoma or Californian wine guys, Burgundy is still the absolute example of Pinot Noir, but we've got our own identity in Alsace, and we've got very specific terroirs, and very close to some of the first growth are Grand Cru of Burgundy, for example, in my case, Pinot Noir like the Sandal, with a very specific place where we plant clones coming directly from Burgundy with very low yields. And Sandal means in Alsatian, in our dialect, the little sun, and it's a wonderful place, able to produce great Pinot Noir, and we do the best, and we do our best to produce great Pinot Noirs. So Alsace definitely have a great potential for red, and we never forget the history, in the winemaking. By making wine since 2,000 years, there's always a part of history. And we never forget during the Middle Age time, Alsace produced as much white as red wine.
Right.
So Pinot Noir is really deep in our mind, deep in our winemaking. And there is actually a new generation finding and digging out this history and producing great reds, actually.
So you know that the wines were made there at one time, and I know one of the things that you have studied and have implemented is an approach in the vineyard which tries to be an organic approach, having the soils be very vital and even biodynamic, I think, in part of your vineyards. So tell us a little bit how the working with the soil and the approach you take in the vineyard influences the quality and character of the Pinot Noir in Alsace, please.
Yeah, Dave, you're completely right. There is no great wine without great grapes. It's very funny because usually, and I come a few times a year, in the States, and people see me as a winemaker, but I consider myself either as a viticulturist. That means the guy who is really creating and producing the grapes, because 80% of the quality of the wine is really down in the vineyard outside. So by plugging by earth, by being respectful, or as respectful as possible to the soil on the grapes, by being organic or biodynamic like it is in our case, specifically for the Sandal, for this very specific plot for Pinot Noir. So we try to be as close as possible to what the soil is able to give us, and that's very important. Very low yields, selection coming from, for example, for us, in our case, from the Clos des Epneaux. This is a very specific plot in Burgundy with low yields. And yes, respecting the soil and being organic or biodynamic is really one of the key of the quality of the grapes we are producing. All through its white or red. This is really the key factor of success for producing great wines. Definitely, you're completely right, Dave.
And I know that the Sundial, I believe, is an area within your Fürstberg Grand Cru for the white wines. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Sandal is one of the single vineyards belonging to the Fürstberg Grand Cru. Fürstberg means the peach tree.
Right,
hill.
I love that name. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place, and it's so Mediterranean. It's unbelievable to find. It's a very steep place, south-oriented, and you really feel good in that place. So you feel like being on holiday when you're working. Also, you're working every day there. You really feel good because it's sunny. The sun is shining. You're on limestone. It's really giving great wines all through this Riesling or Pinot Noir, Gewürztraminer. This is a wonderful place, and we're still enjoying this place all through. I'm working there since 20 years. It's really amazing, and you really feel a lot of pleasure when you're walking inside, and it's sunny. Also, it's cold or it's winter time. You really have a lot of pleasure of walking inside.
Now, in that vineyard, one of the advantages you have in Alsace is it's not particularly damp there, and Pinot Noir being a rather sensitive grape, that's an advantage that Alsace has, does it not?
Yeah, actually, Pinot Noir is covering 10% of the superficie, but there is a new trend, a new generation, and real new opportunities to plant more Pinot Noir, and specifically to bring Pinot Noir in the best places, so specifically the one recognized as being Grand Cru classified. And that's the reason why we choose 15, 20 years ago to go ahead and to plant Pinot Noir. Also, actually, Pinot Noir is not recognized. There is a new project to make Pinot Noir recognized in the Grand Cru area. Was actually not recognized as Grand Cru, but by planting a wines, you want to be more, how should I say, more ambitious.
Yes.
And every winemakers know you get the best results after 10 or 15 or 20 years, and now there is a big trend and a big demand and a lot of ambitious to produce great white wines. And as I mentioned just before, during the Middle Age, we had as much white and red wines in Alsace. And Pinot Noir always belonged to the greatest red wine in Europe. And not only the Burgundian version, but Alsatian version is absolutely great and very, very fine, very delicate, maybe a bit less tannin than the Burgundy one, but very exciting and very able to age. It's absolutely amazing to try all the Alsatian vineyards, all the Alsatian Pinot Noirs. It's a great experience.
Well, congratulations on your work there, and I'll look forward to seeing more of your Pinot Noirs, Christian Beyer, as they come along from Domaine Emile Beyer, and I know that you have the passion and the hard work to do it, and sometimes a little bit of magic, and you have a good partner in your good wife Valerie. So that's a good formula.
Yes, winemaking is always a team. It's always a team. There is always a team behind.
Right.
And my wife is the closer. She's the closest partner. So she's choosing all. We are choosing all the shows are done together, and she's my. I usually say she's my stronger customer. So she usually try the wine at any time of the winemaking. So she really enjoy making wine. And by making wine since 14th generation, it's a huge challenge. But we're still having pleasure, and that's the main important thing for me. Taking pleasure in what you do daily in your job, and sharing this pleasure with a lot of people. So specifically in Pennsylvania, all over the States, it's always a huge pleasure. Yep.
Congratulations again, and thank you for joining us. And to our listeners, we're going to take a little bit of break, and as I said, when we come back, we'll be talking with Andre Ostertag about his Alsatian Pinot Noir, so hang with us. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Dave DeSimone in the Wine Cellar. If you enjoy listening to my Wine Cellar programs on KQV, then please check out my columns each Wednesday in the Pittsburgh Tribune Review and online at daveswinecellar.com. And for fun wine and travel-related photographs and tips and information on local wine dinners, check out my Instagram and Facebook pages. And remember, always enjoy and share a glass of wine each day with food and friends. Thanks for listening. Welcome back into the Wine Cellar. This is Dave DeSimone, and thank you again to Christian Beyer talking about his Pinot Noir. So now, as promised, we have Mr. Andre Ostertag from Domaine Ostertag in Effig in Alsace. Andre, how are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Good. Doing well. So it's really exciting. We got a little bit of introduction to the Pinot Noir, and I know that that you're no stranger to that. And I believe that, like Christian, you studied your winemaking in Burgundy, did you not, Andre?
Yes, I studied in Burgundy like a lot of Alsatian people, and I get there my feeling or my sense of Grand Vin, and I really enjoy to study in Burgundy because it's a place where you have a high sense of terroir, and it's what I brought back to my winery here.
Mm-hmm. And it's not that far from Alsace, but culturally Alsace is very unique, and I'm sure coming back to your home in Alsace, you're not trying to make Burgundy Pinot Noir in Alsace. You have a unique circumstance in Alsace, correct?
Yes, in fact, the temptation is always to try to make a copy, but it's a beginner temptation, and after a while you understand that you have to find your own line and you have to discover your own essence of what's going on in your plant and in your soil. Mm-hmm. And I think as Alsace is it's not far away from Burgundy. That's true. It's just 3 hours from there. But it's different because 3 hours doesn't mean anything. Alsace is central of Europe, and here we have a cultural blend, a little bit like you in the States. We have an European mix. We are a cross between Latin and German cultures, and the wines here have a strong influence of both. So I believe the Pinot Noir of Alsace is anything with a little bit more. First, we have higher. The vines are trained with a higher canopy. That's a very important difference, and the soil a little bit different also, and the climate is a little bit different. So all together makes that the wines here have a own identity. How can I describe that? It's an identity. I would not say it's more rustical because rustical is a bad word, but it's anything with a little bit more strength, a little bit more less silky, a little bit more masculine.
Masculine, yeah. I know what you mean. Some people, if they know about Alsace Pinot Noir in this country, the consciousness is changing. But traditionally, they associate Alsace Pinot Noir with kind of a rosé style. But it's been my experience trying your wines and those of Beyer and others that they actually have a very good richness of fruit and good minerality and a little bit of tannins, but they're not necessarily a delicate. They do have delicacy, but they're not a rosé by any stretch of the imagination.
No, the rosé was probably the tradition here because rosé is a consequence of Alsace produce mostly white wines and they look to red wines like they make a white wine. So for a long time Alsatian people had no really savoir-faire for making red, and this is a very recent story. And I think that the modern Pinot Noir in Alsace are serious red wines because first of all people have reduced a lot their crop, and if you overcrop you have not the same extraction possibilities. So if you reduce your crop you can make a serious red wine. And second thing is that people have more and more, at least at Ostertag, we have discovered that you have not the same vision to a red wine grape that a white wine grape. You have to manage the sun, the heat in a different way. In white, you have to protect from too much heat because you destroy subtility and acidity. And in reds, you can you should expose to sun because you build better tannins. So this is all step by step what we have all, at least the best growers have discovered, that we have to treat the vineyards in a different way if it's red or if it's white.
Right, I see. Not one size fits all. And one of the things I know that is important to you, Andre, is the biodynamic approach in the vineyard, and that's certainly oriented towards having lively soils and using a natural approach to dealing with some of the challenges and various aspects of wine growing. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. I think that basically we don't make better wines that we have grapes. So if you want to make great wine, you need great grapes, and the best grapes are made from happy vineyards, and happy vines are vines you respect, and there is no better way to respect them than biodynamy, because biodynamy is a very natural principles with taking care on vines, but it's more than taking care. It's giving to the vines the ability to have their own conscience, to have a kind of automatic reaction and not a dependence to humans, and vine to have an immunity system with activate are better adapted to difficult circumstances. So I think biodynamic is, for me, the most progressive technique to grow vines at this time of the humanity. And I still believe biodynamic is not only good for growing vines, it's also good because it's producing grapes with better taste, with better nutriment components, and it's better for your health in a general point of view.
Yeah, it's interesting that the wines sort of have an independence, a vigor on their own, but then you train them to do help produce the product that you want to get in terms of the fruit there, but they're doing the work. And I know that I believe you produce two different Pinot Noirs, the wine that you call the Vin de Frise, the Pinot Noir or E, as we say in English, and then the Vin de Pierre, or the Pinot Noir from Franzos. I know that in the time we have left, let's talk a little bit about Franzos, because I did have the opportunity to visit there, and what an absolutely unique terroir and place that is. What is it about that is for Pinot Noir, Franzos Vineyard, and your view on that, please?
Franzos is a very strong place in terms of personality, because it's a southwest facing slope. So southwest, it's very unusual in Alsace. If you have been in Alsace, you have visited Alsace, you know that on the west part you have, on the western part you have the Vosges Mountains, and there are very few exposure who are exposed southwest. And southwest is evening sun, so it's anything who makes cooler mornings and warmer nights, warmer evenings, and it creates conditions to ripe slowly, but with very complex aromatics. The other very interesting part of Franzos is a very interesting soil combination. It's a mix of marns, a very heavy type of clay, and also mixed with chalk. And chalk is, as you know, is a dominant soil in Burgundy and in Champagne, and it's probably the most adapted soil to Pinot Noir. And it's why Franzos is very unique, because it has the perfect soil for Pinot Noir and a very unique exposure. And you know that wine and terroir is a mix of sky and earth. So climate and minerality and light and mineral power. So
there's an example of how Pinot Noir finds a terroir which is unique, and in your view, in your hands, it can be crafted into a really magnificent wine. Do you feel that there are other such terroirs or exposures in Alsace? In looking into the future for Pinot Noir in Alsace, is this something that your generation, the younger generation, is embracing and will continue to grow?
Definitively, I see. I'm starting to. My son is back in the winery since 1.5 years now, and he studied in Burgundy like me and like a lot of other people, and he's coming back with a lot envy of making more Pinot Noir. And Pinot Noir is definitively a very hot subject in Alsace now, because all the young generation dreams to make great red wine. And it's also related to the fact that we have a definitive impact of global warming, and that the climate has changed, and probably the climate is no better for Pinot Noir than it was by the past. So there are a lot of conditions who, for me, are very positive for making Pinot Noir, more Pinot Noir and better Pinot Noir in the future in Alsace.
It'll take time, of course, because you have to have the plantings. And in terms of the clonal selection, do you think it's important to take a selection Massal from existing vineyards there in Alsace, or would you take them from Burgundy? What's the view on that? I'm very strict defender of diversity, and I believe the best system is the most diverse system. So I don't say anything is wrong. I say as more
different things you put in a place, as better you do. So I think the best way is to mix a blend of different selection of clones, the best clones of Burgundy, with Massal of Alsace, and make the most complex blend you can produce. And this is for me the future of planting.
Mm-hmm. And see what happens with the result, because that's the wonderful thing. It's always a new vintage coming along, and that's one of the challenges of the winemaker. So I guess just lastly, in terms of your style, you're trying for an elegant style. You have a richness, but there's not a lot of new oak, and you're certainly not a blockbuster style in terms of the Ostertag Pinot Noir, correct?
No, not at all. If you know me, I'm not an American football player. So I'm more a cyclist, or a poids plume, we say in French. Fed, I don't know how you say in English when you have the latest weight. So there is a relation for me between your own personality and the wine you do. So it's difficult to do another way.
Right.
And I definitively prefer the more elegant and spiritual style than the more body powerful style.
Right.
But I think that it's anything with even it's a little bit more complex than that, because it's a question of style, but it's also a question of feeling of what you put inside, and it's not only a question of what you want to do; it's what you are. It's a question with even as important as what you want to do is what are you, because you make the wine you are.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I see what you mean. It's like a seamless circle. Where does it begin? Where does it end? Where do the vines begin?
Yeah.
Where does the winemaker begin? And that's a beautiful thing, because, if people take the time to look for wines like that and enjoy them, I think there's great pleasure, and certainly sharing wines like that, because I certainly drink with a lot of how should I put it, sometimes people who are a little bit snobby about Pinot Noir and look just to Burgundy, but it's their loss, because if you don't have an open mind, you're missing a lot. So, but anyway, Andre Ostertag, it's definitely a pleasure. Thank you for taking time to talk with us about your Pinot Noirs.
Thank you, Dave.
My pleasure. And please tell your father, Ostertag Père, Adolphe, hello. I enjoyed meeting him, and I see that you have him working quite a bit around the place, despite his advanced age.
Yeah, he's always active, and it's a recipe of long life.
Good thing. Okay, so thank you, Andre Ostertag. To our listeners, hang in there. We'll be right back to wrap up. Hi, this is Dave DeSimone in the Wine Cellar. If you enjoy listening to my Wine Cellar programs on KQV, then please check out my columns each Wednesday in the Pittsburgh Tribune Review and online at daveswinecellar.com. And for fun wine and travel-related photographs and tips and information on local wine dinners, check out my Instagram and Facebook pages. And remember, always enjoy and share a glass of wine each day with food and friends. Thanks for listening. Welcome back into the Wine Cellar. This is Dave DeSimone. Thank you again to Christian Beyer and Andre Ostertag for talking about Alsace Pinot Noirs. And as you heard, there's really a lot to discover with Alsace Pinot Noir. You can buy them online now, and I definitely encourage you to check out the email Beyer and the domain Ostertag Pinot Noirs. And thank you again for tuning in this evening into the Wine Cellar. And remember to check out my website at daveswinecellar.com. And until next time in the Wine Cellar, cheers and good night.